Welcome to ASMR Bedtime Stories. Thank you so much for joining me. Enjoy tonight's audiobook. Bunny Brown and his sister Sue on the Rolling Ocean. Chapter 5. At the Hospital. Bunny and Sue were so fond of playing and had so many things to do, and their chums came into the yard, and they all had such good times playing steamboat again that the little boy and girl did not think much more about Mr. Pot and his missing son and treasure. In fact, Bunny and Sue did not again remember about Mr. Pot until one day when they happened to be out under one of the apple trees on which the fruit was still green, for this was early summer. Then, as Bunny saw some of the fruit, which had been blown by the wind down on the ground, a sudden idea came to him. "Oh, Sue," he cried, "I know what we can do." "What?" asked the little girl, always ready to follow the lead of her brother. "We can go to the hospital," announced Bunny. "Why do we want to go to the hospital?" asked Sue. "You aren't sick, and I don't need a doctor." "We can go to the hospital to see Mr. Pot," went on Bunny. "Always, when anybody is sick, people go to the hospital to see them. I mean well people. And we're well. We can take things to the hospital for Mr. Pot." "What can we take him?" asked Sue, falling in with the idea. "Apples," announced Bunny. "Always they take fruit to folks that are sick in the hospital." "Yes, and flowers too," said Sue. "Once, Sadie West's mother was sick in the hospital, and Sadie took her flowers." "Sure, we can take flowers too," agreed Bunny. "There are flowers growing over there," and he pointed to a distant meadow, gay with dandelions and daisies. "You pick a lot of flowers, Sue, and I'll get some of these apples, and we'll take them to Mr. Pot in the hospital. In a basket," he added. "You have to take stuff to people in a hospital in a basket. I'll get a basket, and I'll pick the flowers," agreed Sue. "Oh, this'll be lots of fun, won't it, Bunny?" "Lots of fun," agreed the little boy. "Mr. Pot'll be glad to get the apples and the flowers." Sue crawled through the fence to go to the meadow to pick a bouquet of daisies and dandelions, while Bunny ran back to the house to get a basket. He met Bunker Blue, who had been sent to the house by Mr. Brown on an errand. "Hello, Bunker," called Bunny to the big red-haired youth. "Hello," answered Bunker. "Going fishing, Bunny?" he asked when he saw the basket which the little boy had found in the woodshed. It was a basket used to bring chips into the house for starting the fire. "No, I'm not going fishing," bravely answered Bunny, as he started back to the apple tree. "Where are you going then?" Bunker Blue wanted to know. "To the hospital," was the answer. "Ha ha," laughed the fish boy. "You aren't sick. What are you going to the hospital for?" As Bunny kept on without answering, Bunker said to himself, "I guess he was making believe, as he and Sue are always doing. Going to the hospital. Oh, that's pretty good." He did not really think Bunny meant what he had said, but Bunny and Sue were very much in earnest. The little boy reached the apple tree, and looking over in the meadow, saw his sister gathering the flowers. "Pick a nice bouquet," he called to her. "I will," she answered. "I found some buttercups, too." "That's good," said Bunny. "Buttercups are good for sick folks in hospitals. I'll put all the apples I can find in the basket." The apples on the ground were mostly those that were wormy, which was the reason they had fallen from the tree so early. And looking at some of this fruit, Bunny decided it was not very nice. "But there are nice apples up on the tree," he said to himself. "I'm going to climb up and pick some." The apple tree was a low one, and to as active a boy as was Bunny Brown, it was not at all hard to climb. So up he scrambled, leaving his basket on the ground. Pretty soon, Sue Having picked as many dandelions, buttercups, and daisies as her hands would hold, crawled back under the fence. She looked beneath the apple tree for Bunny, but did not see him. "Bunny, Bunny, where are you?" she called. "I see your basket, but I don't see you." Just then, a good green apple fell at Sue's feet. By good is meant that the apple was not wormy, though it was not ripe either. As Sue saw and heard the apple fall, she looked up, saying, "Oh, it nearly hit me." She saw the branches and leaves rustling, and then her brother's voice called, "I'm up here, Sue. I'm picking better apples for Mr. Pot. Those on the ground are wormy." "Oh, I'm glad you're up there," said Sue. "I thought maybe you'd run home. Anyway, there's a cow over where I picked the flowers. Maybe she'll hook me." "Cows don't hook people," announced Bunny, as he picked some apples and put them in his pocket, now and then losing his hold on one so that it fell to the ground. "Only bulls hook people," said the little fellow. "Cows don't." "Well, anyhow, she's shaking her horns at me," replied Sue. "Maybe she doesn't like it that I picked flowers in her meadow." "Oh, I guess she doesn't care," stated Bunny. "Look out now, I'm coming down." Sue stood out of the way, and Bunny scrambled from the tree. He had plenty of green apples now, and with those picked off the ground, using only the best of them, and with Sue's flowers, the basket was now quite filled. "We'll go to the hospital now," said Bunny, as he and Sue stuck the daisies, buttercups, and dandelions in among the apples. "Mr. Pot will be glad to see us." "Yes, I guess he will," agreed Sue. There was only one hospital in Bellemere, and the children knew where it was, as it was not far from their house. So they walked along toward it, turning from the orchard out into a side street, which did not take them past their home. If they had gone past carrying that queer-looking basket of fruit and flowers, and if Mrs. Brown had seen them, she would very likely not have let them go. As it was, Bunny and Sue tramped along the streets, and more than one man and woman turned to look at the two pretty children, for they made a beautiful picture, carrying the basket between them. When Bunny and Sue made up their minds to do anything, they went right ahead with it. They were not bashful or afraid. Just now their minds were so filled with doing what they thought was a kindness to Mr. Pot that there was not any room for thoughts of being afraid. So they marched boldly up the front steps of the hospital and into the reception room, where a pleasant-faced nurse, wearing a white uniform and a white cap, met them. "How do you do, children?" she greeted them. "Hello," answered Bunny Brown. "We've come to your hospital," added Sue. "Oh, have you?" asked the nurse, smiling. "Well, we're glad to see you, but you don't look as if you need hospital treatment, either of you." "Oh, no, ma'am, we aren't sick," Bunny made haste to say. "But Mr. Pot's sick, and we brought him something to eat." "The apples are to eat," quickly said Sue, lest a mistake be made and the flowers served as a meal. "We brought the apples for Mr. Pot to eat, and he can smell the flowers. But if he gets them too near his nose, they'll make his nose yellow. The buttercups will. My nose is yellow, look." And she held her nose up to the nurse. "Oh, yes, I see your nose is a little yellow," and the nurse laughed quietly. "How did it happen?" "I smelled a buttercup too close," said Sue. "Mr. Pot's nose will be yellow, too." "Yes, if he smells a buttercup, it will," agreed the nurse. "Where is he?" asked Bunny. "If you'll tell us, if you'll please," he added, remembering his manners. "We'll take these apples up to him, and the flowers, too." "The flowers ought to be put in water," put in Sue. "Yes, I suppose they ought," agreed the nurse. "If you will give your basket to me, I will see the flowers are put in water and placed in Mr. Pot's room. You'll like them, I'm sure." "He'll like the apples, too," said Bunny. To this the nurse made no answer, but as she looked at the green fruit in the basket, she could not help laughing, though she took care not to let Bunny or Sue see her mirth. The children were taken in charge by another nurse, who entered just then, and to whom the first nurse explained matters. "They want to see Mr. Pot?" said the nurse, who was called Miss Manton. "I don't know who they are, but they brought some fruit and flowers." "I'll take care of the basket," said the first nurse, glancing at the second nurse and picking up one of the green apples. "Yes, put the fruit away for him. He couldn't eat it just now, for he had some lunch only a little while ago," Miss Manton said to Bunny and Sue. "But the flowers can go right up to his bedside. He will like to look at them. And now, whose children are you? Is Mr. Pot your father?" "Oh, no!" exclaimed Sue. "I'm Bunny Brown, and this is my sister Sue," explained the little boy. "Oh, yes, now I remember. It was from your house that Mr. Pot was brought here," said the second nurse, Miss Manton, who was in charge of the hospital. "Well, I think you can see Mr. Pot for just a few moments. He is very ill and not altogether right in his head. Sometimes he wanders in his talk, but he may know you when he sees you. Come along." "Shouldn't we give him the apples and flowers?" asked Sue. "Miss Wilson, the nurse you met first, will attend to that," said the manager, and she smiled a little. "Has Mr. Pot's son Harry come to see him yet?" asked Bunny, as he and his sister followed the manager along the clean halls. "No one has been to see him yet except the doctor," was the answer. "I didn't know he had a son, Harry." "He has. He was lost in a wreck, and so was the lost treasure," explained Bunny. "Oh, that's too bad," remarked Miss Manton, the manager. She led the children upstairs to a clean, white room, where, in a clean, white bed, lay the man who had been tossed off his horse and hurt. Another nurse was coming out of the room as the children and Miss Manton approached. "Is Mr. Pot able to see anyone, Miss Wentworth?" asked Miss Manton. "I think so," was the answer. "He has been talking to me and seems some better." Bunny and Sue were led into the room. Mr. Pot looked at them, but he did not seem to remember them. "Where did you come from?" he asked them. "Why, don't you know us?" asked Sue. "You fell off your horse in our yard." "Oh, yes," said the man in a weak voice. "I know something happened to my horse, but you aren't my son Harry, are you?" he asked Bunny. "No, you can't be my son. He's much bigger than you," went on Mr. Pot, before Sue's brother had a chance to answer. "My son was on the schooner Mary Bell when she foundered. Harry was sick, and I guess he didn't get off. He wasn't in my boat, but maybe another boat picked him up. Poor Harry. He's gone, and so is my treasure. Harry was lost in the West Indies." Bunny and Sue started and looked surprised as they heard the name of these islands. Miss Martin saw this and asked them, "Do you know this man's son, children?" "Oh, no, ma'am," said Bunny, "but we're going to the West Indies on a steamboat soon." "Maybe we could find his son," added Sue. "Oh, Bunny, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could?" "Yes," agreed Bunny, "very wonderful." Then a change came over Mr. Pot. He tossed restlessly on the bed and cried out, "Avast! Belay there! Drop the anchor! We're sinking! Where are you, Harry? Save the treasure!" "He's out of his mind again," said the nurse softly. "You had better go home, children." Chapter 6. Off on the Trip. Feeling very sorry for Mr. Pot, Bunny and Sue walked down the stairs and toward the front door of the hospital. They had done their best to be kind to him by bringing him fruit and flowers. True, the apples were green, and the sick man could not eat them, but Bunny and Sue did not know this. The nurses did not tell them, for they did not want the children to feel disappointed. But the flowers were all right to go in the sick man's room, and a little later, the buttercups, daisies, and dandelions were put in a vase with water at the stems and placed on the table near Mr. Pot's bed. "Do you children know your way home alone?" asked Miss Wilson, as she let Bunny and Sue out of the hospital. "Yes, thank you," answered Bunny. "Shall we come tomorrow and bring Mr. Pot some more apples and more flowers?" asked Sue. "Oh, no, I think not, dear," the nurse answered. "You brought him enough apples to last a week." though the day after tomorrow, if you wish, you may bring more flowers. I think you will like them." "We'll bring 2 baskets full," offered Bunny, swinging in his hand the wood basket, which had been emptied and given back to him. "Oh, 1 basket will be plenty," said the nurse, laughing. "Goodbye." "Goodbye," echoed Sue. "We'll come back day after tomorrow," promised Bunny. But that was not to be, for when that day came, Bunny and his sister had started on their trip to the rolling ocean. "Where in the world have you children been?" asked Mrs. Brown, a little later when Bunny and Sue walked in the front gate. "We've been to the hospital," answered Bunny. "Where?" asked his mother in surprise. "To the hospital, to see Mr. Pot. We took him some nice apples and buttercups," explained Sue. "Good land!" cried Bunker Blue, who was working around the yard. "I heard them say they were going to the hospital," he told Mrs. Brown. "But I thought it was only one of their make-believe games." "We truly went to the hospital, and we saw Mr. Pot," went on Bunny. "But he talks funny, so we came away." "Of all things!" cried Mrs. Brown. "What will you 2 do next? But don't try to think up any queer things to do," she was quick to say. "I've been looking for you to have you get ready to go with your father and me on the ocean trip." "Oh, on the rolling ocean!" cried Bunny Brown. "Are we going now?" asked Sue eagerly. "If we are, I must see which of my dolls I'm going to take." "No, we aren't going now," answered her mother with a smile. "But your father telephoned a little while ago that we would start for Philadelphia the day after tomorrow, so I must get ready sooner than I thought I would need to. That's why I was looking for you children, but I never imagined you had gone to the hospital. How is Mr. Pot?" "He's better," said Sue. "He's worse," said Bunny. "He kind of thought I was his lost son, Harry, until he saw I wasn't big enough." "Poor man," sighed Mrs. Brown. "I hope he will find his son." "And the treasure," added Bunny. "Yes, and the treasure too," said his mother. "I don't know what sort of treasure it is, but I hope he'll find it." "Maybe it's a box of gold, like in the fairy story," said Sue. "Or diamonds," added Bunny. "But, Mother," he asked, "why are we going to Philadelphia? I thought we were going on the rolling ocean." "We are," answered Mrs. Brown. "But to get on the ocean, we have to go on board a ship, the Beacon, with Captain Ward in charge. And as the Beacon sails from Philadelphia, we must go to that city to get on board. So we are going to leave for Philadelphia day after tomorrow, and then the next day we shall be on the Beacon." "Hooray!" cried Bunny Brown. "What fun we'll have!" "Lots of fun," echoed Sue. The remainder of the day was a busy one in the Brown home, for Mrs. Brown had to look over and sort the clothes she was to take for the children. Sue saw her fur coat in the closet. "Oh, I want to take that," she cried. "Nonsense," laughed her mother. "Remember, we are going to the West Indies, down south, where it is very warm. You'd never want to wear that fur there." "But if we went to the North Pole, we'd want furs, shouldn't we?" asked Bunny. "I guess you would," said his mother with a laugh. The following day was busier than ever in the Brown home. The family was to start early the next morning on the train for Philadelphia, and everything must be in readiness the night before. So valises were packed, the trunks were sent on ahead, and in the afternoon, Bunny and Sue went about saying goodbye to their playmates. "Do alligators grow down in the West Indies?" asked George Watson of Bunny. "I guess so," was the answer. "Why?" "Because I wish you'd bring me back one if you can," said George. "I will," promised Bunny, though he had not the slightest idea in the world how to catch alligators. "Just a little one," added George. "I guess maybe my mother wouldn't let me keep a big one in the house." "I'll bring you a little one," said Bunny. When Sue went to say goodbye to Helen Newton, that little girl said, "Will you see any orange blossoms down south, Sue?" "Oh, yes," Sue answered, for she remembered having seen those wonderful and sweetly perfumed flowers when she and Bunny were in the sunny South the other time. "Please bring me some orange blossoms," begged Helen. "I will," said Sue. "You see, one of my dolls is going to be married," explained Helen, "and I want the orange blossoms for her veil." "Just like your cousin Louise when she was married last week," exclaimed Sue. That afternoon, Mr. Brown paid a visit to the hospital where Mr. Pott had been taken. "He is a very sick man," said Dr. Rudd. "He was more badly hurt in his fall from the horse than I thought at first. But the worst of it is that he has some worry on his mind. It's about his lost son and a missing treasure, as he calls it. If he could find his son or hear from him and get back this treasure, he would get well much more quickly." "I'm afraid he'll never get either," said Mr. Brown. "People lost in a shipwreck are seldom found again. And since Mr. Pott doesn't seem to know where his treasure was lost, there's no way of finding it for him." "I suppose not," said Dr. Rudd. "But he'd get well more quickly if his mind was easier." Bunny and Sue hardly slept that last night, so eager were they to start on the trip. And they were up early in the morning. At the last minute, Bunny dragged out his Christmas drum and wanted to take that along. No, you can't take that," said his father. "I want it to scare alligators with," said Bunny. "What does the child mean, scare alligators?" asked his mother. "I'm going to catch a little alligator for George Watson," explained Bunny. "When I'm catching a little alligator, I want to drum and scare the big ones away." "I don't believe you'll be able to catch any alligators," laughed Mr. Brown. "Leave the drum at home, Bunny. We only have 2 small staterooms on the Beacon, and there isn't much space for drums and things like that." "Can't I take my doll?" asked Sue. "Oh yes, bring your doll," said her mother. "And I'm going to take my flashlight," said Bunny. "Yes, anything like that which you can put in your pocket is all right," admitted his father. Bunker Blue drove the automobile carrying the Brown family down to the railroad station, where they were to take an early morning train to Philadelphia. They had a little time to wait, and Bunny and Sue ran up and down the station platform while their father and mother talked with some friends whom they met. Finally, a long, shrill whistle was heard. "Here comes the train," called Mrs. Brown. "Oh, goody, goody," shouted Sue, jumping up and down. "Now we'll soon be on the rolling ocean," cried Bunny. Mr. Brown helped Bunny and Sue up the steps and then assisted his wife. He carried the valises into the car, which was not so crowded, but what there was room for the Browns to get 2 seats near together. "Goodbye, goodbye," called Mrs. Brown out of the open window to a number of friends who had come to bid her goodbye. "Goodbye," answered the ladies on the platform. "Hope you have a good time down there," called some of Mr. Brown's friends to him. "We'll try," he replied. The engineer blew his whistle again, and the train began to pull slowly out of the station. Mrs. Brown drew her head in from the window and looked at the seat in front of her, where she had put her little girl and boy. Sue was there, but Bunny was not. "Where is Bunny?" asked his mother as the train began to move faster and faster. "Was he left behind?" Chapter 7. Aboard the Beacon. Mr. Brown, who had been waving farewell to some of his friends on the station platform, turned to his wife as he heard her voice and asked, "What's the matter?" "Bunny is gone." "Gone?" "Yes, he was in his seat with Sue a moment ago. He must have got off the train to see some of his boy friends. Quick, Walter, go and get him." Mr. Brown darted for the door, but paused a moment to ask Sue, "Did Bunny go out?" "I didn't see him," Sue answered. But then she had been looking out of the window and would not have noticed what her brother did. Mr. Brown gave a quick glance about the car. Bunny was not in sight, and the train was now pulling rapidly out of the station. Then a man who was sitting just behind Mrs. Brown said, "I saw a little boy go out of that door. Perhaps he may be the one you're looking for." "Oh, yes, I guess he is," gasped Sue's mother. "Bunny is always doing such strange things." By this time, Mr. Brown was near the door leading out to the front platform of that car in which the Browns were traveling. But before his father could step outside, in came Bunny. "Where have you been, Bunny?" cried his mother. "Just out on the platform," he replied. "Why?" "You shouldn't go out on the platform when the train is moving," chided his father. "You might be jolted off." "Well, the train wasn't moving when I went out there," explained the little boy as he went to his seat beside his sister. "I came in as soon as it began to move." "Why did you go outside?" asked Bunny's father. "I wanted to throw away my chewing gum," he explained. "I got through with it, and I thought maybe if I dropped it on the floor of the car, somebody would step on it, so I went outside to throw it away." "Well, that was a right thing to do," said Mr. Brown, "but it would have been safer to have thrown it out of a window. Don't go out on the platform again." "No, sir, I won't," promised the little boy. The excitement was over, and the Browns began to enjoy the train ride. Of course, it was more fun for Bunny and Sue than it was for their parents, since the little ones had not traveled as much as the older folks. The ride to Philadelphia took all morning and part of the afternoon, but the day was broken in a very delightful way, for the children at least, when they went to the dining car for lunch. "I love to eat in a car, don't you, Bunny?" whispered Sue. "Yes," he answered. "It's fun to see the trees go whizzing by and the telegraph poles skip along while you're eating." The travelers reached the Broad Street station in Philadelphia about 3 o'clock, and Bunny and Sue looked about them in wonder at the big train shed into which the engine pulled them. It was noisy, smoky, and dirty, and they were glad to get out of it into the open air. Across the street from the station was a great building. "That is the Philadelphia City Hall," explained Mr. Brown. "On top, though you can't see it from here, is a big statue of William Penn, who years ago helped settle Pennsylvania, which is the state we are now in." "That's a funny city hall," exclaimed Bunny. "Look, there's a street going right under it, and automobiles too." "That's queer, a street under a building," said Sue. "The city hall is so large that it is built right over the sidewalk," explained Mr. Brown. "And as you say, Bunny, a street, or an alley, runs beneath it. Now come around this way." "Oh, look at the pigeons!" cried Bunny, as he ran on ahead around one corner of the building. Here was a plaza, and here and there were statues of famous men on pedestals. Flying in the air overhead, or flocking down on the sidewalk to pick up grains and nuts scattered by bird lovers, were scores of pigeons. They were so tame that one of them flew down on a man's arm and picked grains of wheat from his open hand. "Oh, aren't they cute?" cried Sue. "I wish I could feed them," said Bunny. "Here you are, children. Give them some of my grains," offered the man, of whom the birds did not seem in the least afraid. He poured into the outstretched palms of Bunny and Sue some wheat from a bag he carried. Then, as the children held out their hands, the pigeons circled around them, and one finally perched on Bunny's wrist and began picking up the grains. "Oh, I wish I had one," cried Sue. A moment later, her wish was granted, for down flew a beautiful white bird, and, cooing away, perched on Sue's arm. Then, as she trembled with delight and held out her hand with the wheat in it, the pigeon began to eat the grains. "Well, I think we have been here long enough," said Mr. Brown to his wife and children. "Come, we must go on to the hotel now." "Oh, are we going to stay at a hotel?" cried Bunny, for his pigeon, having eaten all the grains from the little boy's hand, had now flown away. "Yes, we shall stay at a hotel tonight and go on board the Beacon in the morning," explained Mr. Brown. "It is rather late to go on her now. As it is, we shall be on board long enough. I think one more night in a comfortable big bed would be best for all of us." "Won't there be any beds on the ship?" Sue wanted to know. Do we have to sit up all night?" "Oh, no, we'll go to bed, of course," said her mother with a laugh. "But Daddy means on the ship there isn't as much room as we have at home or in a hotel. We shall have to live in small staterooms, and the beds are more like shelves on walls than real beds." "I know," cried Bunny. "They're bunks, like we slept in when we went to sugar camp." "Something like that, yes," agreed his father. Having shown the children City Hall, which was the reason that he did not at once take a taxicab at the station, Mr. Brown now called one of the swift little autos, and soon he and his family were in a fine hotel on one of the main streets in Philadelphia. If they had not been so eager to get on board the ship, so they might begin voyaging on the rolling ocean, Bunny and Sue would have enjoyed their stay at the hotel much more. As it was, they liked the place well enough, and thought the big dining room wonderfully fine, brilliant as it was with lights while soft music played. Going back to their own floor, Bunny, walking along the corridor, saw near the room where he was to sleep with his father a little red box with a glass door. Hanging by a short chain to the box was a little hammer. "Oh, what's that?" asked Bunny, pointing to it. "Is the little hammer there so they can see who can break the glass first? Let me try," he begged, reaching up towards the red box. "I'll break it." "No, indeed, don't touch that," cried Bunny's father, holding him back. "That's a fire alarm. There is a hook to pull down, which makes a bell ring and gives the alarm. The glass is over the hook so that it can't be easily pulled. But in case of fire, the glass is to be broken with the little hammer and the hook pulled down. We don't want any fire alarms now, Bunny." "Well, but if there is a fire, can I break the glass and send in the alarm?" the little boy wanted to know. "I guess so, yes, if you see the fire first," laughed his father. "We don't want any fires, though," said Mrs. Brown. "We'll hope, Bunny, that you'll not have a chance to send in the alarm." Though feeling a little strange at first in their hotel beds, Bunny and Sue at last fell asleep and did not awaken until their father and mother called them in the morning. After breakfast, they took another taxicab to the wharf where the Beacon was tied up. "Oh, she's a nice ship," exclaimed Bunny, getting his first glimpse of the steamer that was to be their home for several weeks. "It's bigger than our play boat," said Sue. "And it's got real water around it," added Bunny. "I should think it would have," said his mother. "A big ship like the Beacon couldn't very well sit on a grass plot, as your pretend boat sails at home." "The water is the Delaware River," explained Mr. Brown. "We shall go down the river in a little while." "Oh, aren't we going on the rolling ocean?" asked Bunny, in disappointed tones. "Yes," answered his father. "The Delaware River empties into the ocean. We shall be on the big waves soon enough, don't worry." This pleased the children, and they walked up the gangplank and on board the Beacon. "Glad to see you," said Captain Ward, who knew Mr. Brown. "I'll call a steward and have him take you to your staterooms." "Oh, what cute little cabins!" cried Sue, as she looked in the one where she and her mother were to sleep. "Look, there are bunks," called Bunny, pointing to the beds fastened one above the other against the wall. Then, as the steward was pointing out places for them to stow away their luggage, the ship began to tremble and seemed to be moving. "Oh, are we going to start so soon?" asked Mrs. Brown. "Why, our trunks aren't on board. Do stop the ship, Walter. Don't let it go."